We'll now be moving on to the second section of this Q&A, in which we will be having a series of yes or no questions, so to speak. They are more binary in terms of answers.
There's a few of us here who don't really like binaries, huh?
Did you always want to get into politics?
It's a lot of work. And, sometimes, well, this campaign is 1 month long, but the campaign for the European Parliament elections was like more than half a year. It really can affect your relationships. Your family has to be really supportive and understanding that they're not going to see you very much. Your partners have to be understanding that you might not be around as often.
I've always wanted to get into politics. It's just that I didn't feel comfortable getting into politics. It's difficult, especially here in Malta, considering that I didn't want to get in with the big parties.
I didn't want to get into politics. I never thought I would get into politics because to me politics was this cliche environment of yes, no, eating your face, not eating your face. And if the opposing party would completely bash you until you're bashed and can't be more bashed. But past politicians have taught me that if you want to be part of the change, the change starts from you.
Did you wind up getting the job you dreamt of ever since you were little?
When I was younger, I always thought that I would be... my background is business. But when it actually came to managing my family's business, I felt out of place. It wasn't my cup of tea, so no, I didn't. Today I'm in digital marketing. And I'm very happy doing it, because digital marketing is so vast.
So when I was young, the first kind of thought of a job that I had was being a writer. Right now I'm a freelance writer in terms of my job, though freelance writing is basically it's more of a hobby that sometimes, if you're lucky, you get people to pay you to do. So I'm okay. I'm not going to get that childhood dream directly, at least for now, and especially because my current dream is to just be in politics effectively.
When I was younger, the only thing I knew about my future was I wanted to go to university, and I did, and I got a bachelor's in communications and later on a master's in conflict analysis and resolution, and I wanted to write a book. Now I've not really written a book, but we'll allow gray areas here. I wrote a comic for my thesis. It's 24 pages, and that's good enough. And in terms of a dream job, I have a really interesting job. I go on sets and advise TV series producers how to be trans inclusive in terms of making authentic trans representation happen. So it's nothing I would have dreamt of as a kid, because I wouldn't even have thought that job exists. And in Europe, it's very, very recently that this job has existed.
Have you ever voted for an opposing party?
The Greens always drew me. However, I do cross-vote because cross-voting is very valid. Don't forget to cross-vote.
Volt is literally a year old. I have cross-voted before, at least, and it felt really weird doing, because growing up in Malta, you always grow up in a particular household over another household, so,
Ever since I was young, I never really followed politics as a young child. And at home, we never really spoke about politics until it came to voting. Okay, so the first thing that my parents told me was, sit down, watch everything, and you decide. In the beginning of my walk in politics, the Nationalist Party had this mentality that it was against certain things. But I believe that if you believe in something, you have to push that principle forward. The Nationalist Party is an umbrella of different people with different mentalities, and your strengths are not necessarily my strengths, and vice versa. So, yes, I've always voted for the Nationalist Party.
Do you believe that the views of a political party take priority over your own personal views?
I mean, in the party there are structures which are called the Ferat, which are little groups of people, and recently in the past years we have these little groups, other groups known as the clusters. And in these clusters and the Ferat, you speak your opinion. I've pushed forward certain things that today are in the manifesto.
Personal values to me always kind of take a certain level of precedence. It happens that Volt is literally all the principles that I have, Volt has, and for as long as that stays, I'm staying with Volt. Literally, I've had a weight in every single policy we put in the manifesto and beyond, and there's nothing that I am against that Volt believes that I don't believe.
If I get elected and as a Green MP, I'm going to follow what we have in the manifesto because that is what we've told people and that's what we're, pushing forward as ADPD. Now, are there things in the manifesto that I've compromised on my own values? Yes. However, I believe compromise is a part of political dialogue. So in these 2 years, we've actually had the opportunity to discuss and sit and talk and come and reach a compromise, so to say. Let's say it's a compromise for me, it's a compromise for others, for different reasons, on, let's say, the party's position on abortion. And now, along with Volt, we have one of the more progressive positions on abortion. Of course, Volt's is more progressive than ours. Sure, some people might say that went against your values, but I think the fact that I'm in a party that sat, listened, discussed the topic, and allowed us to reach a compromise was extremely, valuable or more valuable.
Are you willing to work with opposing parties in order to reach a compromise? Okay, first time we have all straight yeses.
I want to say though, I have no tolerance for intolerance, that is homophobia, racism, xenophobia.
When I joined the Nationalist Party in 2014, I went on the stage and said, I'm Alex and I'm transgender. Now, being transgender is not what defines me, just putting that out there. However, it's who I am, Now, in the Nationalist Party, there were people who did not agree with me, but the winning factor was communication. I still speak to people that don't agree with me, because who you are does not define you. What you're capable of doing is what defines you. And this is something I feel that certain politicians look past. And that's why I would like to understand where certain people are coming from.
Compromise is important. When it comes to working with other parties, then to me, that's fair game. As in, just as much as I can imagine, ADPD, we have a lot in common, for example, so I can very easily imagine working together to enact some policy. If we had members in parliament, even with PN, with Labour, there are a lot of things that all parties have mentioned that are good. Things that Labour passed that are good, things that when PN was in power they passed that they were good. So to me at least, and as a party even as a whole, we have I have no issue with working with other members of parliament that are of different parties.
Are there any proposals from your own party's manifesto which you disagree with?
Yeah, so as I said, I had a lot of, every single member of the party had a weight in the policies, and I was always in part of the process when it came to writing up the policies and how we went about them, even talking with NGOs to refine those policies. I can definitely imagine expanding it more in the future. To me, the manifesto is what we should aim to achieve now, and then we can improve upon it later.
I really like ADPD's manifesto. It shows that we've worked on it together. We're a party who have experts in various sectors, and this has come true. From energy, renewable energy, to sustainable transport, to the arts and culture, to various other industries. I mean, we've that comes through in the manifesto, and so that's what makes it a really good one for me.
When it comes to PN, in these ferrat and clusters that I've previously mentioned, we approached different stakeholders, we approached NGOs and got their opinion on various things. The electoral manifest is just a roadmap. It's an idea of what the party wants to give to the country. And this time, PN really has outdone itself. Why? Because it's thinking of the environment. And the feedback was taken and put in the manifest. If there's one electoral promise that I like, a proposal, is taking non-arterial roads and discovering them to see alternative routes of bikes.
Have you ever considered running to be leader of your party?
We're taught to crawl when we're young, and we can't run before we crawl, and you can't sprint before you run.
When I joined, there weren't any candidates on the field, so I wanted us to have a voice, so I ended up being the leading candidate. Our leadership is always divided in two. It's always two co-presidents. Technically, we don't have a leader. We have our executive branch. If any of the co-presidents ever choose to step down, I'd kind of be happy to take their place, sort of. But I'm glad in the role that I'm in. And to be honest, again, we're so decentralized that really leadership is just more of a formality, because that's what you need in politics, in sense to be recognized as a party.
In a sense, I have been a leader for the Greens, just for the Federation of Young European Greens, as co-spokesperson for 2 terms between 2019 and last year. Now, in terms of locally and in Malta, people have asked me to consider it, and therefore I have. Now, if it will happen or not in the future, we will see.
We encourage all our viewers to keep updated with our latest events. Stay tuned for all those which are coming. And we also encourage all our viewers watching to keep up to date with the latest developments and news and updates coming out of the 2022 general election campaign. And we encourage all youths out there to make their voices heard and to vote. Thank you.